Hunter Biden's court hearing happening any moment now, where he will plead guilty to 2 tax misdemeanor charges. It's part of what Republicans are calling a sweetheart deal with the Justice Department. So welcome to this brand new hour of America's Newsroom. I'm Dana Perino. Are you ready?
Good morning to you. Yes, indeed I am. Nice to see you. I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning. Hunter Biden will stand before a federal judge in Wilmington, Delaware at this minute, admitting that he failed to pay income tax for more than $1.5 million. He was also facing a separate gun charge, but reached a deal with the DOJ to get no jail time on that. Now the judge is threatening to sanction Hunter Biden's legal team for the allegation of lying.
Very high stakes for Hunter Biden and for his father, Joe Biden. There's been a lot of shenanigans going into minimizing any penalty for many years of tax, let's call them irregularities, alleged tax evasion. And now it's going to come to a head this morning.
Former federal prosecutor Andrew Cherkasky is here, and James Freeman from the Wall Street Journal here with a reaction. But we begin with Jonathan Turley, constitutional law attorney and Fox News contributor. It's a big moment. We've all been waiting to see what will happen. I think in the last few days, people thought, well, the judge will just accept this and we'll move on. But is that in question this morning?
Well, it can be because of the trouble last night where the court gave Hunter Biden's legal team a deadline over an alleged ethical violation. They were accused by the clerk, apparently, of misrepresenting who they represented in order to get material removed from public access, material damaging to Hunter Biden on the record. It's not clear how the court's going to react to that. It doesn't necessarily change the plea bargain, but it could delay matters. In all likelihood, the court will today or later sign off on this plea bargain, even though there is ample evidence to suggest that this was a fixed deal, that it was something of a sweetheart arrangement. The judges are leery of pushing prosecutors to bring additional charges. They view that as outside their lane.
So the judge is thinking everything you're bringing to me is something that's already been settled, and she just has the final word as to whether she accepts the plea or not. Based on that answer, that's what I take from that. You write, however.
Yeah.
Yes, in a word, right? I wanted to get your headline in the New York Post. Media beg Republicans to move on from Hunter Biden because they know scandal is serious. Explain your point.
Well, what's fascinating about what has happened with these IRS whistleblowers is that none of the members asked the whistleblowers any substantive questions except for one, and that was Congressman Goldman, who tried to find some way to diffuse this damaging evidence. It was a disaster. In less than 5 minutes, Goldman demolished Biden's defense and showed that the president has been lying for years to the American people. So the amount of maneuvering room for the members is virtually down to zero. And so all the press and members can do is to say, well, can we just move on?
Right.
Well, they're not moving on. And it was particularly weird in the hearing when they're sitting in front of 2 respected whistleblowers who are saying that this deal was fixed. And these members were saying, well, he's taken responsibility. The investigation is over. They're sitting in front of 2 people saying that there was political interference. That's why it's over.
Jonathan Turley, stand by. Andrew Cherkasky is here with us. So take us inside the courtroom. You're a former federal prosecutor. So what is happening right now if they're on time in that courtroom in Delaware?
Well, they're gathering, and then the judge is going to come out, and then there's going to be a discussion on the record about the nature of the plea agreement. There may be questions that the judge asks of the attorneys about the nature of the plea. Really, anytime you have a guilty plea, the question that the judge is going to have is, what's this guy getting away with? Because there's obviously a benefit there. So I think the judge is going to ask questions about whether the charges are as serious as they should be and whether they're as wide as they should be, in terms of whether there's additional crimes that weren't committed.
Michael Goodman takes a different position from Jonathan Turley. He writes in the New York Post, the judge must nix Hunter Biden's plea deal to show that her court won't approve a blatant miscarriage of justice. Do you agree with Professor Turley at great risk, or Michael Goodwin?
Well, there was a amicus brief filed by the Heritage Foundation essentially asking the judge to put more time on the table and consider more of the issues that are out there. And I think that's probably a wise decision here. If there is as much outcry as there is right now, if there's as much information that calls into question the nature of this plea agreement and whether it truly does punish Hunter Biden adequately for the crimes that he committed, let's take more time. Let's find out what's going on. I agree with that position.
Should you, despite what the judge does, should the claims on behalf of should their testimony be included in this case?
Should whose testimony be?
The testimony of the IRS whistleblowers.
Of the whistleblowers. Well, it should be considered as to whether or not there is more crime that is out there, or whether the investigation and the plea deal that's being reached by the DOJ is truly in the public's best interest, because that's ultimately what the judge is doing here, to make sure that the DOJ isn't cutting a deal that is a sweetheart deal within the executive branch. So the judge is the other branch of government here that's running a check on the executive branch, which is the Department of Justice. Those questions need to be answered, and I think the judge needs to be satisfied with that.
Jonathan Turley, I wanted to ask you something about another part of the Michael Goodwin piece. In it, he says that what Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, should have tried to do was to get all of this wrapped up with Hunter Biden before the 2022 midterm. Because what changed then? Well, Republicans took back over. You now have Republicans in charge of all these committees. They're the ones that now have subpoena power. They can get documents. They can put the pressure on, and they can call witnesses like the whistleblowers. So that's why you have all of this additional information coming forward. I mean, Merrick Garland's role in this is exactly what? Do you know?
Well, that is one of the major questions that we have, and it's even more troubling to think that he hasn't had a major role in this. You know, there's a lot of evidence that Merrick Garland is not really actively involved in these issues. He says he's basically handed over the questions to the special counsel, but there's no evidence that he's actually been directing much of the events in the Justice Department as Attorney General. You know, Bill Barr, for whatever critics may say about him, made his presence known. I mean, he was a micromanager. He was felt in every corner of that building. Garland is not like that. And it is possible that he was not aware of some of these controversies, but that itself is a problem. I mean, these are major questions that Congress is looking at. You have discussions of impeachment. You have allegations of bribery. And Garland's been largely absent without leave. And to some extent, you know, the court may take time. The court may just grant this plea bargain. But in some ways, it's now no longer going to be a clear, benefit for Hunter Biden, because he's about to get the benefit of a sweetheart deal. It's going to make it more difficult down the road, because this is basically the heart of the allegations, that he was cut an incredibly generous deal despite countervailing evidence, despite the views of prosecutors and investigators. You know, banking that deal is going to cost later as they go into what looks like an impeachment inquiry.
Andy McCarthy joins our conversation now. And Andy, welcome back. Good morning to you as we await what happens inside the courtroom. We're watching our emails to try and figure it out. There are no cameras inside there today. What about that last point that Jonathan Turley was making?
Yeah, I not only agree with what Jonathan said, let me try to broaden this out a little bit. So what we're hearing, at least what we're being told, there may be a big difference between those things, right? But we're being told there's a continuing investigation. Devin Archer is supposed to testify, Devin Archer being Hunter's partner in a lot of these business dealings, particularly the foreign business dealings. He's going to testify behind closed doors before the House Oversight Committee on Monday. But what we're told is that he's probably already testified in front of a grand jury, and the FBI keeps saying there's information that they can't share with the committee because there's an ongoing investigation. The U.S. Attorney in Delaware, when he was pressed for information, said he couldn't give up information because there's still an ongoing investigation. We know that they've gotten this information from this informant that the IRS agents weren't told about, that there was a $10 million bribe in connection with Burisma. So here's my question. If there's a continuing investigation, and we're talking about bribery of this nature, and we're talking about millions and millions of dollars in foreign payments coming into the Biden family coffers from people connected to regimes that are corrupt and anti-American, and all of this is still under investigation, why on earth would you give Hunter Biden a discount plea at this point in the investigation when the investigation's ongoing and he looks like he's one of the main culprits?
Can you answer your own question, Andy?
It can only be answered by the fact that it's not an independent investigation. He's getting, because of political reasons, he's getting favorable treatment. You just spoke to Jonathan about Merrick Garland's role. One of the things I point out, he doesn't have the luxury of sitting in the peanut gallery. He can't sit back and say, like, he's a spectator and these things are going on in the Justice Department beyond his control. The central problem with the Hunter Biden investigation and the broader Biden family investigation is there's a profound conflict of interest which prevents the Biden Justice Department, or should prevent them ethically, from investigating the president's son in conduct that the president himself is implicated in. So it's a screaming, neon blinking situation where you would have a special counsel. Under the Justice Department regulations, it's the Attorney General who has to appoint the special counsel. He's got to find that there's something serious to be investigated, and there's a conflict of interest that prevents the Justice Department from investigating it in the normal course.
And you're watching.
So again, where is Merrick Garland?
Right. Just want to point out, this is Hunter Biden walking into that courtroom about an hour or so ago, maybe not quite an hour ago. Hunter Biden, who is pleading guilty to these 2 tax misdemeanors. Andrew, let me have 2 Andys here. Andrew, I wanted to ask you, how demoralizing might it be for a federal prosecutor that is maybe not even on this case, but to watch this and think, you mean that you can do all of this work, do all of this investigative work, and they end up with a misdemeanor deal for this guy who's well-connected and is the president's son? And you know, as Eileen O'Connor points out, she used to be a DOJ a division head at Justice Department under taxes, saying in the Wall Street Journal today that you, the viewer, would go to jail for the things that Hunter Biden is accused of.
Well, I think we saw how demoralized the investigators were that spoke last week, the whistleblowers who spoke before Congress last week. It is demoralizing to go into a criminal investigation. And these are good people who are coming in an unbiased way oftentimes. And so they're just looking for the truth. They're looking for things to happen in a fair and even-handed manner. And then you start getting pressure from up top that things are going to go a certain direction. And that is very difficult for these folks to go through. I think the big thing, to talk more about what Andy was saying, the big thing that's going to be talked about today is, are the crimes that he's pleading to today as serious as they're supposed to be? Because there's a huge category of other crimes, stuff that happened overseas, the amount of money from Burisma and China. Those are big questions that are on the table. I think the judge is going to be focused on these tax crimes and whether there was additional criminal behavior within the tax question and investigation, as well as the gun aspect of it, that the government is effectively undercharging or not asking for enough.
So it's limited in scope, is what you're arguing.
I think the judge is going to be focused more on what's on the charge sheet, because that's what double jeopardy would attach to. They can come back and charge him potentially for those crimes overseas if the statute of limitations don't run and things happen in the right period of time. But the thing that double jeopardy attaches to is what's on the document today. And so that's what I think the judge is.
You're a former
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.